Oi, pessoal, olha só a novidade.
Glinda e Elphaba saíram dos palcos da Broadway direto pras telonas.
Wicked ganhou uma adaptação cinematográfica de tirar o fôlego e você não pode ficar fora dessa.
Com as atuações de Ariana Grande e Cíntia Erivo e as vozes de Mira Ruiz e Fabi Bang.
Assista o Wicked a partir do dia 21 de novembro nos cinemas.
Verifique a classificação indicativa.
Ideal mesmo para o mundo atual seria fazer o ensino médio junto com o curso técnico, certo? É no Senac que o aluno tem autonomia de verdade, formação cidadã, foco na diversidade, preparação para o Enem, material didático sem taxas e muito mais. Na real, tem tudo que você precisa para se sentir preparado para a vida. Seja para entrar no mundo do trabalho ou te ajudar a decidir o que fazer na faculdade. Quer saber? Senac. Vem comigo! Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino-médio-técnico.
This is a special bonus episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast.
You won't find this forgotten 80s flick archived in the Smithsonian or on any list of Oscar-winning films. However, for thousands, maybe even millions of Americans who grew up in the 1980s, it still holds a significant place in their cultural memory. It may be where they learned to curse, began to learn about love, and were introduced to the charm of country music superstar Kenny Rogers. The premise may seem absurd in hindsight. A washed-up race car driver looking for a second chance catches some kids stealing auto parts in a small Texas town. After giving chase, he discovers they're orphans who are better repairing race cars than staying out of trouble. A corrupt local sheriff then pursues Kenny and the kids, leading to a healthy mix of humor and drama. So load up the camper, turn down your belt buckle radio, and shake the dew off your Lilly as Chris Adams, Ben Carpenter, and I discuss Six Pack from 1982 on this special bonus episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast.
Race car driver, mister?
Used to be. Might have been again if I hadn't run into you guys.
He's Brewster Baker, a dirt track demon whose racing career was going in reverse. Until he ran into 6 pint-sized grease monkeys.
Hey, turn it over!
Hey, Brew, what do you pay your crew with? All-day suckers?
Kiss off, mister.
They're determined to help him.
Out. Everybody out.
We was only trying to help.
Hey, stealing is stealing, pal, and I don't want any part of it, okay?
Yellow belly, gutless slut.
Must have the same mouth you eat out of.
We got no choice but to stick with you till a better thing turns up.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
I'm taking my Charge E's to Atlanta.
500?
Most unusual story in years.
It's a Grand National race.
Brewster Baker, who's been off the circuit, has been burning up the smaller tracks for the last 4 months with the help of a pit crew of kids.
What are we going to do for a car?
I don't know, maybe we could steal one. God, I believe it.
Well, it's your mind. Kenny Rogers in Six Pack. They're gonna steal your heart.
I'm Tim Williams, the mastermind behind the mic at the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. Joining me on each epic episode is a guest co-host who's as crazy about 80s flicks as they are about wearing parachute pants and solving Rubik's Cubes. We're diving into nostalgic treasures we saw at the local theater, rented on VHS tapes, or discovered on cable TV. From blockbusters that make you say,
I feel the need for speed.
To hidden gems that'll have you screaming,
They're here.
It's a blast to relive these old memories and share our thoughts on what made these movies so special. We reminisce about our first-time watch experiences, share our favorite scenes, and even discover fascinating behind-the-scenes tales about the cast and crew along the way. Haven't hit that subscribe button yet? What are you waiting for?
Come on, do it.
On Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. And hey, while you're at it, be a pal and drop us a written review along with a 5-star rating to tell us what you think about us.
The sportos and motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebies, they all adore him. They think he's a righteous dude.
Take a day off and come hang out with us on social media. Just search 80s Flick Flashback on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And don't forget to bookmark 80sflickflashback.com for more gnarly content.
Get out of town. I didn't know you did anything creative.
Want to crank it all the way up to 11? Become a supporter on buymeacoffee.com for only $5 a month.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Click the link in our episode show notes, and while you're there, soak up the extra trivia and fun stuff that didn't make it into today's show. Thanks again for tuning in. Now, let's get right into today's episode.
Welcome to the party, pal.
All right, well, welcome in, everybody. So glad to have you on this special bonus episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. And boy, do we have a good one for you tonight. So hopefully you've heard of this movie. You've seen this movie. If you were like me, it was one that you grew up on. And I'm glad to have two wonderful co-hosts with me to talk about why they love it so much as well. So welcome back from Retro Life for You, Chris Adams. How you doing, Chris?
I'm great, Tim. Thanks for having me back as always.
Yes, and make sure you'll check out Chris's episode on Six Pack that I was a part of. So you get a twofer on this one. Double header, I guess you could say, double feature, and listen to both episodes. We'll probably cover some of the same stuff, but I'm sure new stuff will come out as well. And then back again, third in a row, I think, Ben Carpenter, who's been very popular with us here lately, but glad to have Ben back as well.
Hey, you can't get rid of me. And
No, don't want to.
No, I'm glad to be back, and I'm sorry I don't have a podcast of my own to plug here. Maybe I'll come up with one.
There you go. Days. Just make one up. It doesn't matter. Everybody's got a podcast now. So, all right, we're talking about Six Pack from 1982 with Kenny Rogers, Diane Lane. So, Ben, when did you see Six Pack for the very first time?
May have gone to see it in the theater. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was but a wee lad, so I don't remember.
Right.
Yeah, I do remember renting it a couple times, back in the early 80s. Mm-hmm. And that may have been when I first saw it.
What about you, Chris?
Definitely a rental at my aunt and uncle's house when I was a kid. I would have been 9 when this came out, I guess. Mm-hmm. And my uncle would always rent movies when we came over to visit on the weekends with him. He'd get a couple of Westerns for himself, and then he would find something that he thought the kids would like. Mm-hmm. And this one stuck out to him. So, because Kenny Rogers, and he knew Kenny Rogers was obviously on the cover, so he grabbed it thinking it'd be good. And we loved it. It was great.
Yeah.
Definitely. It's one of those movies where it's like a good feeling movie. It's a comedy movie. Mm-hmm. It's just got a good story to it.
Yeah. I saw this in the theater twice. I don't remember seeing it the first time, but I remember the second time because for some reason, I don't know if me, my mom, and my dad, if we went and saw it together without my sister, because my sister hadn't seen it. So my mom and I went to take my sister, one of her friends. And I remember because the scene when Kenny Rogers comes in and pretends to be the sheriff, he's got on like the Boy Scouts of America. I remember right before that scene, my mom, because my sister and her friend were sitting in front of us, my mom was like tapping my sister's like, this is funny. You got to see this part. So, and my mom kept doing that through the whole movie. My sister's like, I probably would have liked it better if you had kept telling me when the funny parts were coming. So I have that, distinct memory in my mind of seeing it the second time, but I don't remember seeing it the first time. But obviously it was good enough to see twice. And then I don't remember if this was like heavy rotation on HBO, but I know I saw it so many times. I watched it, again and again and again. So it could have been a rental. It could have been something that was just shown on TV a lot and caught. Because I do remember seeing like the TV version a few times and how they kind of had to edit some of the language and stuff out. But yeah, so how long has it been since you've rewatched it before rewatching it for the podcast? I know Chris just watched it 6 or 7 months ago. We did our episode. So today. Oh, yeah. But before that, like before you did your episode on it, how long had it been since you watched it?
Oh, before we did my episode on it?
Yeah.
Did you? Oh, it'd been since I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't anything that I owned. Mm-hmm. And it's not like you see it on TV right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a category with a lot of other movies in that time frame that were good and were great. I mean, really, in my opinion, were great. Mm-hmm. But they don't play them on television. It's like Tank with C. Thomas Howell and
Garner.
Yeah, James Garner. I mean, great movie, but you don't find it on television anywhere. This fits right in the same role with that. So, I mean, it was definitely when I was younger and it was rented. That would have been the last time I'd seen it. Maybe not at my aunt and uncle's house. So we rented it plenty of times after that.
Right.
But sometime.
What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I was just looking at the DVD here to see. It came out in 1982. So probably the last time I saw it was 1984, I'm guessing. Like, yeah, you know, whenever it came out on VHS, we rented it a few times.
Right.
I probably watched it several times back then. When we rented something on VHS back then, you didn't just watch it once if you're a kid. You watched it 8 or 9 times until you had to go return it.
Exactly. You know? Yeah. So, especially if you got that Friday night rental because you got it Saturday. It was usually closed on Sunday, so you had until Monday. So yeah, if you watched it Friday night, you were watching it again Saturday morning when you got up and had breakfast, and probably Saturday afternoon. Hey, let's watch it again Saturday night, and then Sunday. Yeah. So yeah, you get a good 4 or 5 views out of it for sure. Right. So
but yeah, I hadn't seen it since way back then. So there was very little about it that I remembered.
Yeah, it was probably 10 or 15 years ago. Yeah, probably closer to 10 probably. And we were on a trip to Chicago. I don't know if I heard the song, you know, Love Will Turn You Around by Kenny Rogers. I'd heard the song. I remember I was like, oh my gosh, that was from a movie called Six Pack. And I just remembered the movie. And so I tried to find somewhere to stream it. And I found a version on YouTube, I think, that I was able to watch it, or, you know, somewhere on the interweb. That's probably, you know,
a frowned upon location.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, but I watched it on my phone. It took me right back to my childhood, like just the songs and the scenes and different things that I remembered. So, and then I was able to find it on, get a copy of the DVD probably about a year ago, or maybe less than that. So Ben, you said you found the DVD. Is that one that you already owned, or did you buy it for this podcast?
No, I bought it for the podcast. Yeah.
Look at you spending money to be on the podcast.
Well, I couldn't. It was not on YouTube.
Right.
There was no legal way to watch it other than buying the DVD, and it was like $15, I think.
Yeah, I just say it was a good find. Like I think when I found mine on Amazon, it was probably like 10 or $15, which was like, you know, for a movie that you can't find streaming anywhere, I'm okay paying that for that, you know. So I am surprised that you can't find it anywhere. Like I'm really surprised it's not digital somewhere. But
yeah. I mean, it is surprising because it is a good little movie.
So who in your family watched it with you this time? Anybody, or was this
I could not get anyone to watch it.
Couldn't convince the family.
The kids looked at the cover, I'm sure, and they're like, no thanks, I'm good. And I don't know. I don't think I talked to my wife about it. I don't know if she even really remembers it. She's a couple years younger than me, so I guess she probably remembers it, but I don't know that she ever watched it as many times as I did as a kid. So now, it was just a solo watch for me.
Right. We may have had this discussion before, Ben, but because Ben and I are both in Georgia. Did you grow up in Georgia? Is this your home, or where did you grow up?
Yes. So actually I grew up in Kennesaw, and that's where I lived when this was filmed. And so that was a big part of why I was so excited about it and to see it and watched it over and over, was because I recognize, it was the first time I ever watched a movie and recognized places.
Yes. Yeah. I was going to say the same thing.
That very question. Since you said it, I wanted to ask you that. So you recognize places from the movie?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same for me. Do you remember the part where they are sitting in what looks like a little park sitting area, and there's a small waterfall?
Yeah. High Falls.
Yeah.
Right. That, what'd you say?
High Falls, right?
Is that what it is? Because it looks just like Loretta Lynn's Dude Ranch in Tennessee. It was just after the Nashville race they went to.
Oh, okay. Well, I noticed that. I didn't remember that because I didn't know what High Falls was as a kid, but now I live pretty close to it. So when it came on, I looked at it. I was like, I think that's High Falls, and I Googled it and it said it was, but
okay.
I've heard there is some faulty information on the internet. So
every now and then there is. I'm gonna tell you, it looked just like it, but that doesn't mean there's not other places out there that won't look like what she had set up or anything either.
Oh yeah.
It just seems so convenient they left the Nashville Raceway supposedly or for the race, and I don't know where they would have went after that. I don't remember where they were going after that, but if they were going past where Loretta Lynn's Dude Ranch is, that would have been going west toward Memphis from Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where they would have been going if they had went there toward there, then dropped down and went south somewhere, possibly, or what?
I think a lot of the filming was probably done. It wasn't where they said they were.
Right, exactly.
Because I know like Texas and where were they? Were they in like Missouri or something?
Yeah,
was that where the motel was?
Yeah.
Like that was all Ackworth, Georgia.
Yeah,
which was one town over from Kennesaw where I lived, and so that's where I recognized a lot of the places when I was a kid. Was the stuff they shot in Ackworth.
Yeah, and the research that I did, it was primarily filmed in Georgia. So all of the raceway scenes were done at different tracks in Georgia. So I don't think they actually filmed in Nashville, but they made it look like it was. You know what I'm saying? So
right. I remember they mentioned that. Right. I remember they mentioned that's where they were going, and I wondered, did they actually film the Nashville racetrack?
Yeah. But now I'm sure they did some. Yeah, I think they might have done some B shots where the campers driving through Mississippi or whatever. They probably didn't change all those signs. They just took the van out there and got some wide shots. But all of the primary filming was done in Georgia, I'm pretty sure.
There is one shot when Kenny Rogers makes the rash decision to go to Nashville and swerve the RV off. It's clearly just a sign that says exit 3, and they just sort of put a little Nashville arrow at the top and just screwed that on there for the shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked about where you're from, because knowing that I knew Chris, grew up in the South, and Ben doesn't have me and Ben don't have quite the accent that Chris does, but we won't hold that against him. But
I don't know what you're talking about.
I can have an accent too.
Right.
I don't have the accent. Y'all have the accent.
Right. But I wonder if this whole, like for the Southern kids, like if it had we have more nostalgia for it than maybe like people that grew up in the Midwest or people who grew up in the North. Because of course at that time, NASCAR and stock car racing was just part of our culture. I mean, it was part
country
of
music too.
Country music too, yeah. So
it was more of a Southern thing. Yeah. I think that's maybe part of why it's not so widely available. It's because it was just kind of a regional movie almost. I bet it did a lot better business down in the South than it did in other parts of the country.
Yeah, very possible.
And now these messages.
Hey there, fellow 80s movie aficionados. Are you ready to embark on a nostalgia-filled journey to the greatest era of cinema? Then look no further than the Retro Life for You 80s Movie Podcast. Join us every week as we rewind the VHS tapes, dust off those Betamax classics, and dive headfirst into the neon-soaked, totally tubular world of the 1980s movies. From the Brat Pack to action heroes, we've got it all covered. Breakfast Club, Ghostbusters, E.T. and Indiana Jones, and more. It's like a trip in Doc Brown's time machine, but without the DeLorean. So whether you're a die-hard 80s film buff or just curious about the cinematic gems of the past, Retro Life for You is your ticket to the ultimate movie time warp. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Retro Life for You, and we can be found anywhere you listen to your podcast, as well as on our website, www.retrolife4u.com.
Are you a fan of movies and TV shows inspired by comics? Ready for a podcast that dives deep into the thrilling world of adaptations? Well, look no further. Welcome to Moving Panels, the podcast where we discuss movies and TV shows based on, inspired by, and adapted from the world of comic books. This is your go-to podcast for all things comics on screen. I'm your host, Laramie Wells, and every Monday we explore the dynamic universe where ink meets action. We break down the classics, reveal hidden gems, and uncover the creative process behind your favorite adaptations. Subscribe to Moving Panels now on your favorite podcast platform and join us on this epic journey through the pages of comics and onto the big screen. Remember, new episodes drop every Monday. Don't miss out. Moving Panels, where every panel has a story and every adaptation is a blockbuster. Subscribe today, and I'll see you on the other side of the page.
Sair da escola já com uma formação profissional no currículo? Metodologia por projetos. Preparação para o Enem. Atividades extras gratuitas, como acesso a oficinas, simulados, vagas de estágio, Olimpíadas do Conhecimento e muito mais. Esse é o Ensino Médio Técnico do Senac. Quer saber? Senac. Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino médio e saiba mais.
All right, well, let's jump into story origin and pre-production. Once again, as I was telling them before we started recording, there's not a lot you can find about the movie online for much research. I was able to pull a few things, so this is what I have. So executive producer Edward S. Feldman brought the project to the studio in spring of 1981 under a development deal he had with 20th Century Fox. The project toiled in development until late July that same year when it was announced Kenny Rogers would now produce through his recently formed company Lion Share Productions, while making his motion picture debut in the film starring role. In June of 81, Marvin Davis, a Denver oil man known as Mr. Wildcatter, he actually bought 20th Century Fox. This was one of the first films made during his time at the studio. According to Susan Merzbach, a production vice president at Fox, he didn't pay much attention to the hierarchy. He would often call the production department with his ideas for movies. Although he wasn't involved in daily operations, he did have influence. For example, he was a huge fan of Kenny Rogers, which led to the production getting the green light to begin shooting. So we have Mr. Wildcatter to thank for Six Pack being made.
Thank you, Mr. Wildcatter.
Yeah. So it was good that he was a fan of Kenny Rogers. So as we talked about earlier, it's primarily filmed in Georgia. So the Dixie Speedway at Woodstock, Georgia, was the track used in the film for several dirt tracks. Parts of the movie were filmed in Jefferson, Georgia at Jeffco Speedway, also known as Georgia International Speedway, and Peach State Speedway, now known as Gresham Motorsports Park. Some local Jefferson teams were used as extras in the film. The film crew worked from the Holiday Inn Powers Ferry in Atlanta, Georgia. At least one scene was filmed in a guest room there. Another scene was filmed at a pub located in a strip mall up the hill from the Holiday Inn. The jail and sheriff car sabotage scenes were filmed in downtown Beaufort, Georgia. The scene with the van going in the river was filmed in Suwanee, Georgia at Settles Bridge at the Chattahoochee River. And of course, the movie features the Confederate memorial sculpture at Stone Mountain in the scene where Brewster wakes up just hours before the final race, so I think when I saw this, we were living in North Carolina before we moved to Georgia. So that was my first time ever seeing Stone Mountain. So then I remember going to Stone Mountain when we moved here and like, oh, I've seen that in a movie before. So that was, it was funny to see that show up again here. And I'm thinking, especially now, like, how do they get on the park to dump him there? Like, they just make it like it's just a random piece of woods somewhere in Georgia. But
right. And then the end is Atlanta Motor Speedway, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Instead of Daytona,
I did recognize an intersection near there.
Yeah.
And knew that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
So.
In the scenes at the beginning where he's supposed to be in Texas, I mean, it's clear Georgia foliage on the trees. Like there's not much, it still looks very much, if you're from Georgia, you know what Georgia looks like. So it was.
Well, a little bit of a side topic, but we live in Georgia, and so we recognize what it looks like around here.
Right.
And now that so much stuff is filmed around here.
Oh, yes, for sure.
I watched that movie Civil War a couple weeks ago. Yeah. And I was like, it was clearly, that was Georgia. Yeah. They were driving through and they said it was Pennsylvania. And, it's like, that's
the same.
I've been up there too, and that's not what it looks like. So
I remember when we moved to Georgia and would watch the reruns of like the Dukes of Hazzard, they used a lot of, the shots of them driving the cars where it was clear they were in a studio and there was a screen behind them. Like, we would drive around Stone Mountain and we're like, this is the road they were on because I've seen the scenery so many times on the Dukes of Hazzard. Like I've passed that patch of trees before, or you'd see like the rock formations behind them. So
and that's so cool when you're a kid. It's like the Duke boys were here.
Yeah, the car and touched the ground.
Yeah.
Generally, you drove over this dirt.
No, but a production van did to get the footage. All right, well, let's jump into casting. So a few of these are a little bit lengthy, but most of them are pretty short. But we haven't talked about a lot of people in this movie. So, but of course, we'll talk with the star Kenny Rogers as Brewster brew breaker. If you don't know much about Kenny Rogers, in the 1960s, he helped form the First Edition, an eclectic-styled rock band whose repertoire included rock and roll, R&B, folk, and country. The group decided to disband in 1976, and inevitable as it was, Kenny went solo. It didn't take long before he started chalking up a string of country-tinged top 20 pop hits such as Lucille, Don't Fall in Love with the Dreamer with Kim Carnes, Through the Years, We've Got Tonight with Sheena Easton, and his 2 number 1 hits, Islands in the Stream with Dolly Parton, and Lady, which was written by Lionel Richie. By the late 70s, the now Silver Fox had sold over $100 million worth of records. $100 million worth of records. Into the 80s, he began to feel a downswing in his singing career, and he wisely branched off in other successful areas. In 1980, he touched off a modest, lightweight, but highly appealing acting career, starting with the Southern-styled TV movie The Gambler, based on his Grammy-winning hit song. The feature had Kenny starring as a poker-playing card shark, Brady Hawks, who attempts to unite with a son he never knew. This led to 4 equally popular sequels: The Gambler, The Adventure Continues in 83, The Gambler Part 3, The Legend Continues 87, The Gambler Returns, The Luck of the Draw 1991, and Gambler 5, Playing for Keeps in 1994. 2 other old-fashioned Western TV movies followed. The first was also based on a hit country song, Coward of the County, in which he played a town preacher who tries to mentor his young cowardly nephew. The second, Wild Horses in 1985, had him starring as a has-been rodeo champion looking for personal fulfillment, herding wild Mustangs. Kenny Rogers was 43 when he starred in Six Pack. It was his first and only top-billed movie role to be released in theaters. So everything else he did was pretty much on TV. Are you a fan of his acting career? Did you watch the TV movies that he did growing up?
I saw the Gamblers movies.
Mm-hmm.
I've yet to see Coward of the County. I want to see it, but I've yet to watch it. I like the song.
Yeah.
I've yet to see the movie though.
Yeah.
I feel like I have seen that one. I remember nothing about it, but I feel like I have seen Coward of the County.
Yeah.
He's one of the better examples of country musician turned actor, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other good ones too, like, Dwight Yoakam and Chris Christopherson.
Right. Reba McEntire's done pretty good for herself.
Randy Travis had a few roles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to put him up there if I remember. He was a better singer than an actor, if I remember.
Oh, he was not a great actor by any means. And he didn't have starring roles either, mind you. It was always now the closest thing to a starring role I think he might have been the movie Texas Rangers, where he played a higher up officer in that Texas Rangers movie, along with I think it was Dermot Mulroney.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah. It was like a lesser Young Guns. It
was the start of the Texas Rangers.
Yeah. But it was all young cowboys kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And they wanted you to get the feel of Young Guns.
Right.
Because Young Guns was still a very popular thing at the time, and they wanted to play off of that, and they did. It did fairly well. I think it didn't do awesome, but it did fairly well. And I liked it because I like that kind of Western, the new modern Westerns.
This movie, towards the beginning especially, I thought it had a feel of a TV movie. So
it does have that feel in a few spots. Yeah.
Right. But then I felt like it kind of worked its way out of that, and it felt more cinematic a little bit towards the end. But that doesn't. I didn't realize he had a string of TV movies like that, but that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I actually found Coward of the County on a streaming service probably like 7 or 8 years ago. I don't think, it was on for a little while, and it'll pop up on Tubi, I think, maybe every once in a while. So you could find it. The song is better than the movie. I think I saw the first Gambler when it came on. The other ones I think were more like mini series, that there were multiple night movies. Like it wasn't just a 2 hour, it was like and they'll replay those every so often on like certain like basic cable channels for like during the weekend or whatever. So, but yeah, I thought he was pretty good. What I didn't mention at the beginning, why I'm sure I saw this movie in the theater was my family, or my mom and dad, were huge Kenny Rogers fans, and I was too at the time. So we had a bunch of his albums. We listened to him all the time. So I would see him on different TV specials. He'd been on the Muppets a couple of times, the Muppet Show. So So it was easy for me to like enjoy this movie as being a big fan of his already. So, and I'm, even now that he's passed, I'm still a fan. I'll throw in a good Kenny Rogers, album in a minute. So, I like the old Kenny. It's funny to me, like they talk about all the songs from the 70s. Like those are the songs that I remember. I was barely alive when those songs came out, but I think because they had like a Kenny Rogers greatest hits album, which is probably the one we listened to the most, is probably why I know those more so than the stuff he did later. But even some of the stuff in like the mid 80s wasn't too bad, but you could tell he was trying to be more pop, and it just didn't cross over as well. But
I did visit his gravesite.
Oh,
recently.
Really?
Yeah. Not, my wife really loves Oakland Cemetery in downtown Atlanta. It's a historic cemetery where all the ex-mayors are buried there, and Bobby Jones, the golfer, is buried there, and Margaret Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's buried there now, and he has the hugest, most ornate like mausoleum in the whole place.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I didn't realize till doing the research for this that I didn't know that he was living in Georgia when he passed away. Like I didn't know he was in like Sandy Springs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I didn't realize he was even in Georgia like the end of his life. But yeah. So Burt Reynolds was rumored to have turned down the lead role of Brewster Baker. I kind of saw that little bit of trivia when I was rewatching it yesterday. He could have played it, but I would have seen him more as the Turk character. Like I thought that would have been, if they could have got Burt Reynolds to play Turk, I'm like, what a great, pairing to see the two of them kind of play off each other. I think he would have done a really good job in that role.
Absolutely.
So, all right, next on the list, Diane Lane as Heather Breezy Akins. This is a little lengthy, but I've never really followed Diane Lane's, like I've seen her in a bunch of stuff, but like how her career started. So
it's okay. Just talk slowly. Okay. You take all night talking about Diane Lane if you want to.
I can tell you're a fan. Okay. As he gives me a thumbs up that nobody can see. So Diane Lane was 13 when she was cast by director George Roy Hill in his wonderful 1979 film A Little Romance opposite Sir Laurence Olivier. The film only did so commercially, but Olivier praised his young co-star, calling her the new Grace Kelly. After her well-received debut, Diane found herself on magazine covers all over the world, including Time, which declared her the new young acting sensation. However, things quieted down quite a bit when she found herself in critical and financial flops. She made several TV movies during this period, but was in 1983 that she finally began to fulfill the promise of stardom that had early been predicted for her. Acclaimed director Francis Ford Coppola took note of her appeal and cast her in 2 youth-oriented films based on S.E. Hinton novels, Rumblefish and The Outsiders, which both came out in 1983. Walter Hill's glossy rock and roll fable Streets of Fire in 84 was not the huge summer success that many had thought it would be, and the massively troubled Coppola epic The Cotton Club in 1984, co-starring Richard Gere, was also a high-profile flop. The back-to-back failure of both of these films could have ended her career there and then, but thankfully it didn't. Possibly burned out by the lambasting these films received and unhappy with the direction her career was taking, she retired, quote-unquote, from the film business at age 19, saying that she had forgotten what she had started acting for. She stayed away from the screen for the next 3 years. She returned to acting to appear in The Big Town and Lady Beware, but didn't make another big impression on a sizable audience until 1989's popular and critically acclaimed TV miniseries Lonesome Dove, and was nominated for an Emmy Award for her role. She was now reestablished in Hollywood and started to appear in higher profile co-starring roles in some big budget major movies like Walter Hill's Wild Bill in 95, Judge Dredd with Sylvester Stallone in 95, Jack with Robin Williams in 96, and Murder at 1600 in 97 with Wesley Snipes. After the worldwide success of The Perfect Storm in 2000, she was more in demand than ever. She was in Glass House in 2001 with Keanu Reeves, and Hardball in 2001 as well. However, her greatest career moment was her lead role in the enormous critical and commercial hit Unfaithful in 2002. Her performance won the respect of critics and audiences alike, as well as many awards and nominations, including Best Actress Oscar and Golden Globe nominations. Her follow-up films included Under the Tuscan Sun in 2003, Must Love Dogs in 2005, Hollywoodland in 2006, Secretariat in 2010, and the blockbuster Man of Steel in 2013. She was actually 17 years of age when she appeared in Six Pack. She had a long career, like an up and down career. But, she's been in a ton of stuff, and you don't think about it until you kind of go through her filmography and think about all the movies she was in. But
she's still getting roles now, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's still acting.
I mean, she's still going at, I believe it's 57 or 58.
Mm-hmm.
1 to 2.
Yeah.
Just saying, she's not much older than me. That's all I'm saying.
So you still got a shot.
Right.
So you're saying I still got a shot.
Yeah, it's like I think when I rewatched The Outsiders 2 years ago, I think I'd forgot that she was actually in it until she popped up on the screen. I was like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot Diane Lane. And same with this movie. When I rewatched it that when I found it on YouTube, I didn't remember that was Diane Lane in this movie. When I watched it then, I was like, oh my gosh, a young Diane Lane. I wouldn't have even.
Yeah, Lonesome Dove miniseries was pretty good too.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in like the Western setup and everything. So
yeah. Anything to add, Ben?
I didn't realize she was only 17 in this. That does add some creep factor to a couple scenes, like where she's trying to seduce Turk,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cringy to watch now.
Miss Bobby E. Lee.
Yeah.
They named me after the general.
Yeah. It's an 80s movie. There's always going to be at least one or two cringy scenes. You're like, ooh, this did not age well. So.
Yeah.
All right, moving along with Erin Gray as Lila. In 1978, she was put on a 7-year contract at Universal Studios, which led directly to her taking the role of Colonel Wilma Deering in Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, which was first a theatrical release movie, then became a weekly TV series. Shortly after Buck Rogers ended, she appeared in the first season of Magnum P.I., where she played security expert Joy Digger Doyle. The role was intended to become recurring and even possibly spun off into a separate series, but never happened. She then took the role as Kate Summers in the TV sitcom Silver Spoons, which lasted from 1982 to 1987. In 1993, she had a featured role in Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, the 9th entry in the Friday the 13th Friday the 13th series. She took quite a turn there in her, roles.
And the one you just mentioned, the last one, is that the one where at the end of it, the mask is laying on the ground and you see Freddy Krueger's glove come up from the dirt and pull it down with him?
Honestly, I've never seen it, so I do not know. So.
Okay. I think it is for some reason.
It might be because I know they were trying to set up the whole Freddy versus Jason thing around that time. So yeah, very possible. But I was a huge fan of Buck Rogers. That was like, I watched it every week.
Love Buck Rogers.
Yeah. Went back and watched it on Netflix probably like 15 years ago. And it was like, this show was not good. It had
today's standards, but today's standards of shows you see, you're probably thinking it's not good, but put yourself in your mindset of that young kid again. And it's like, man, there's one of my favorite, it's like, I like Star Wars, I like, the Star Trek and all that, but the last, we got Buck Rogers. I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you like it better than Battlestar Galactica, or were you more of a battle? See, back then it's like you had the movies. It was Star Wars versus Star Trek, right?
Mm-hmm.
With TV Land, you've got Buck Rogers versus Battlestar Galactica.
I never watched Battlestar Galactica. I think I tried to get into it once, and I never. Even when they did the reboot, like 20 years ago, a friend of mine was like, "Oh, you got to watch it. It's so good." I just couldn't get into it. So I don't know.
The one thing I remember about the original was Dirk Benedict being in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And was his name Starbuck or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was.
Yeah.
And there was a little throwback on the A-Team when they did the A-Team. One of the creatures, I think they were called Cylons, walked past him as he's reading a newspaper. And he's like, "Huh?
Yeah.
No, no."
Yeah.
I always thought that was kind of funny. But I watched both of them growing up because I was into that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I always liked Buck Rogers better, though. It always stood out more to me.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize. I'd forgotten that she was in Silver Spoons, which I loved.
Oh, I love Silver Spoons. Yeah. Big Ricky Schroeder fan.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wanted to live the Ricky Schroeder life in Silver Spoons.
Oh yeah.
Your dad played video games all day? Yes, please. Has a train going to his living room? Yes, please. Yes, I'll take.
I think I asked my parents, could we please build a train through the house?
I thought at least put an arcade game in the house.
Yeah.
I'll settle for the arcade game at least. Just give me one of those.
All right, and then we've got Barry Corbin as Sheriff Big John. He's best known for a starring role as Maurice Minifield on the television series Northern Exposure, from 1990 to 1995, which I was a big fan of. His other notable credits include Urban Cowboy in 1980, Stir Crazy in 80, War Games in 83, No Country for Old Men in 2007, as well as the television series Dallas, Lonesome Dove, One Tree Hill, The Closer, The Ranch, Yellowstone, and Tulsa King. So he is still. I remember when he popped up on Yellowstone, I was like, "Man, he's still alive." But
I just did the same thing recently. I just got into Tulsa King.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Finally, and I saw him. I was like, "Wait, is that the dude from War Games?"
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. He's been in a ton of stuff. I mean, he always plays those roles so well. So.
Yeah.
And then Terry Kaiser as Turk Logan. I mean, of course, we just talked about him earlier this year with Weekend at Bernie's. That's what he's most known for. So I won't go too much into his filmography. So most of the kids didn't do anything else besides this movie. Like a few of them were actually from Georgia, like born here. So they were probably like a local casting kind of a thing. So I will mention their names. Tom Abernathy played Lewis. He didn't do anything else besides this. Robbie Fleming as Harry or Little Harry. This was the only movie he did. Robbie Still as Swifty, who I thought for sure, he's had to have done other stuff since this movie because he was one of the standouts to me. But I think he was in one other small role and a side role in something. Benji Wilhoit as Steven had more of a career than most of his co-stars. His credits include Sleepaway Camp 2, Unhappy Campers in 88, where he actually dressed up like Freddy Krueger in that movie. Fast Food in 89. He played a young soldier in Glory in 89 with Matthew Broderick and Denzel Washington. And he also had a small role in Career Opportunities in 1991. Yeah, so those are the ones that kind of the other kids. And of course, the one that we most recognize, Anthony Michael Hall as Doc. This was his film debut. This was his first time he did this before he did Vacation, which he's known for that, as well as 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, and Weird Science we just covered a couple months ago. Was there a favorite of the kids that you had, maybe?
I always thought Swifty was kind of funny.
He was the funny one.
Because he had the mouth on him.
Right.
Always getting in trouble running that mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of still to be funny to me. And other than that, I mean, obviously, Diane Lane, but yeah, Swifty was probably the one that just kind of, when I think of Six Pack, if I'm thinking about the other kid actors, honestly, I don't think about Diane Lane because she's been in so many other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the one that always comes to mind first and foremost.
Yeah. Because Anthony Michael Hall really has, his role is not that big. He pops in every once in a while, but he doesn't have memorable lines or anything that's makes him stand out as much as Swifty does.
But the thing is, the reason why I don't think Anthony Michael Hall is because I think there's so many other movies he was better in that stick out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, he's much better in Vacation, which came out a year later. So
Vacation, you got was it 16 Candles or Pretty in Pink? One of the two.
16 Candles. Yeah.
16 Candles. And you got, of course, Weird Science.
Mm-hmm.
Johnny
Be Good.
Johnny Be Good. Yeah. I mean, just some of the others he stands out in versus that one. So
what about you, Ben?
I thought most of the kids did well. I'm surprised none of them, or not many of them, other than the two that we know, went on to, have much of a career. But,
right.
Yeah, they were good little child actors. That's usually, I mean, it's challenging to get good performances out of kids. I think it takes a certain kind of director, I think, to get good performances out of kids.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think Swifty stands out to me, but they gave him more to do than anybody. Him and Breezy, I think, were the two that they had more of the character arc for lack of a better term in this sense. But they both had more of a story to tell. The other kids were just your typical, Doc was the smart one, or as far as mechanics, and then Steven was the money guy. He was, I would say they called him the financier or something like that. And then Lewis was just, what's his line? That ain't no lie. That's just his line the whole movie. So, and then little Harry's just there to be cute and make you want Brewster to adopt him. That was his role. Stand there and look cute. So, yeah. So two more of the cast, and then we'll talk about Buddy Baker as himself. He was one of the announcers at the end. He's an American professional stock car racing driver, and he was a commentator at that time. And then who I didn't think I'd see in this movie, Chuck Woolery, who's listed as race narrator.
But I remember him from it too.
Yeah,
I remember his one big line, and it is, "We haven't even started the race, and Brewster's already
making a pit stop."
Making a pit stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. I did not remember. I mean, I guess I don't know if I knew who Chuck Woolery was when the movie came out. No. I don't know if he had started hosting game shows by then, or
he actually had. He was the original host of the daytime Wheel of Fortune from 75 to 81. So before it went to prime time and Pat Sajak took over, he was the host.
Oh, okay.
He was.
What do you remember him from? When you hear Chuck Woolery's name, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Love Connection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, everybody's always thinking, instead of the movie he said something pit stop, he should have said that Bruce will be back in 2 and 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 2 and 2 with his fingers. Yeah. So he did. Yeah. So he was Wheel of Fortune, the original incarnation of Love Connection from 83 to 94. He hosted Scrabble from 84 to 90. He was going Greed on Fox from 99 to 2000. He did Lingo on Game Show Network from 2002 to 2007. So, and as we talked about in The Running Man, he was the first choice to play Killian instead of Richard Dawson.
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, he couldn't get out of his Love Connection contract, I think, or there was something else he was already obligated to. He couldn't get out of to do that. So,
I always loved Scrabble. I thought that was a good game show.
Scrabble was a good game show. Yeah. All right. Anybody in the cast that I might have forgot or didn't talk about? There might have been a few others that might have recognized but didn't discuss.
Did we talk about Diane Lane?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Extensively. So
checking.
You can go back and listen to it over and over again once we post it. All right, let's talk iconic scenes, favorite scenes. I know it had been so long since you watched it, but if someone says the movie Six Pack, what's the first thing that pops in your head?
A number of scenes, really.
I mean, I guess because it was filmed in Ackworth, one town over from where I grew up, I remembered the scene when Breezy ran away.
Yeah.
And Brewster was looking for her because that was all around Ackworth. And I remember recognizing that. But, it's not a very remarkable scene.
Right.
I will say, I think the most exciting, or this movie contains the most exciting chase scene between an RV with pulling a trailer and a milk truck.
Yes, I would agree with that statement. I would agree with that statement. Yeah. What about you, Chris? Iconic scene, or the scene that sticks out to you the most? Diane Lane showing up.
Well, of course, Diane Lane stands out. Yes, all the breezy scenes that were in the movie are in my brain from today. No, seriously though, you know what? It's funny. It's not like he mentioned a moment ago. It's not a very iconic scene or anything, but they're in the RV. They're going down the road and they're looking for the next place to go to. And he's reading off the list of places in the paper, and he comes across Nashville, and he says, "There, stop. What's that? Nashville. That's where we're going." And they're going to Tennessee, and the little kid in the back starts singing Rocky Top. I hate this because I am not a UT Vol fan. I'm sorry if y'all are. I'm not. But I mean, this is fine. It's okay. I have plenty of family friends that are. I heard Rocky Top so much growing up that I'm probably sick of it. When I hear it, I just want to go. So I mean, but that stands out for me because I remember in the movie they sing that little bit, one of the verses for Rocky Top, and and I hate to say it is a catchy song as much as I hate it. And then of course like you mentioned, the chase scene, him pulling a trailer with a frame of a car on it now, I guess, and chasing that big giant milk truck looking whatever it was, snap-on tool truck down until it flies off in the river. I mean, those two really kind of stand out to me as far as memories. So
yeah, I think the one scene that I think I remember that kind of when I think of Six Pack is when they show up, when all the kids show up, and he thinks that he left them at it was at Shreveport, I think was the last stop when they bought him the ice cream at the Baskin Robbins little counter, which I'm sure that kid selling the ice cream was one of the extras in Jefferson. It's like, We only got Rocky Road or something. I don't remember what his line was. That's for Rocky Road. We only got vanilla. Brewster's working on his car, and then Doc drops the stethoscope down, and then he comes out and like he's standing there, and then all the kids like go into the car and start working on it. He's just like standing like, what's going on? So I think they played that a lot in the trailer, so it must have been why I remember that scene a lot. But
your scene is funny because he's laying under there, and they just got done telling him, one of the race car drivers told him what was wrong with his car.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, that's cute. That's real cute. And then he sees this thing dangling in front of him, and he's like, no.
Right.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It can't be.
Yeah.
And then as you see him peeking over going, welcome to your nightmare.
Yeah. And I love how, it's obvious that Lila is the one that got him there because they're like, she's in, that's what Lila said, you'd be good for you, whatever. So, she's not in the movie a whole lot, but they keep her involved in the movie, which I thought was good. So, but yeah, going back to like scenes, I think we talked about the milk truck scene when it goes into the water and Brewster has to go down and try to save them from the water. I love how it's supposed to be Texas, but you can see the Georgia red clay in the water. When he gets in the water, it's like, I'm like, that's, it's Georgia because the red clay down there. So yeah. What about favorite scenes? What you have any favorite scenes in the movie?
No.
Don't think too hard. We love
I know Chris's answer is anything with Diane Lane.
Right.
When Diane Lane is walking in the rain, all sad and confused,
I imagined I was Kenny Rogers picking her up in the van and comforting her.
I was Kenny Rogers, yes. No, seriously. I like the part where one of the funniest scenes for me is when he goes to pick them up at the jail.
Yes, yeah, that's
when they were first taken away.
I'm here to pick charges.
He's talking just like him. He says the exact things he would say. If they focus on the badge and behind it, you see Boy Scouts of America.
Yeah.
And it's like he tells the woman that she's so cute, he'd like to just pick her right up and kiss her right on the mouth and walks her across the state of Texas. He's just all flattered and everything and going with it. And then the other guy comes in, if you just right behind him, he says the exact same thing.
Right, exactly.
And she looks up with this horrified look on her face, like, no. Yeah, that's definitely one of the funnier parts of it, I thought.
I don't know that I had a favorite scene that stood out, but I did have some things that I thought of or that sort of made an impact on me.
Yeah.
But when at the beginning, when they steal, they basically strip Brewster's car and steal all the stuff out of it. His entire means of livelihood has just been stolen out from under him. And he basically goes out and kind of pounds his fist down a little bit, like, shoot.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, very subdued reaction. And also, it struck me as odd that he seemingly can walk into any bar in the Southeast.
Oh, yeah.
Walk up to a waitress and French kiss her.
Yeah. All the waitresses know him. I was like, this is a family movie that he's, it's pretty much implied that he's been intimate with every waitress in every bar.
He's just popular. He's a race car driver. He's popular.
Yeah. I guess
that was just a friendly way of saying hello.
Oh, okay. I guess I'd forgotten that about.
Did you guys watch, when they did the Beverly Hillbillies movie and they learned about the California howdy? They were just being nice to people when they did that. I mean, they didn't know any better. So as we were growing up and we watched him walking to all the bars and he's planting a big old kiss on one, we're like, oh, he just say hello. He's being friendly.
Is this why you kiss all the waitresses when we go out to eat, Chris?
Yeah, I'm overly friendly a little bit. I've been told I'm a little too friendly. They may call the cops. So, no, I'm just kidding on that. For anybody listening, I do not do that.
No.
I don't even live where this man lives.
I know we're in Tucson. We've met each other in person once, so that's it. So yeah. I was gonna bring up about he's very promiscuous. Brewster Baker was, but also, I'm surprised that he doesn't have a concussion because he's knocked out several times in the back of the head, which he always wakes up the same way with like this grimace on his face and his hand touching the back of his head. So, but I love it when he gets thrown in, I mentioned earlier when he's at Stone Mountain, they throw him in the woods or whatever, and he's all hurt. He gets up and his t-shirt says Ford Tough on it. I'm like, I just thought that was funny. Like, he's obviously not that tough because he got beat up. But I will say, he did really well in the fight scenes like that. The fight scene he has in the parking lot of the Holiday Inn, I think, is where he was leaving, and the guys, Turk's guys, kind of corner him. They had a pretty good fist fight.
Yeah.
So he was pretty good with his fight choreography.
Yeah, I guess it was just good stunts, but there was one shot where it looked like he really got hit in the face. It looked like he really took a punch to his cheek. And
There's a few scenes I wondered who his stuntman was, like the scene at the beginning where he gets locked in the bathroom and has to climb out the window and he falls as he's on the tires. So it's like that's clearly a stunt man, but did pretty good.
They just got one of the guys from well, I guess it didn't exist at the time, but the dudes who looked like Kenny Rogers website. Do you guys remember that? There was it was in the early days of the internet. It was one of the first, just like, let's just make a web page for something really stupid. And it was just a web page of, you could submit your pictures of dudes who looked like Kenny Rogers. And there was an amazing amount of guys out there who looked like Kenny Rogers. So maybe that was one of the early ones that they got to fall out the window instead of the real Kenny.
That's awesome.
The only thing with that I can think of that brought so much notoriety to Kenny Rogers was Seinfeld and the Kramer episode talking about Kenny Rogers roasters.
Oh yes, the restaurant he had. Yeah.
Yeah. The lights were so big.
Yeah.
The lights were so bright it was in his window and he couldn't sleep.
Right.
Yep, there was a Kenny Rogers Roasters. I don't think there was ever one near where we lived, but we would travel somewhere. We would pass one. I think I ate there a couple of times. It was decent. It was.
We would win in Nashville for a while. I haven't been down that way in a while. Don't know if it's still there or not. But not quite downtown Nashville, but 5 minutes away from it, and they had a Kenny Rogers chicken there.
It's rotisserie chicken, pretty much.
And now, these messages.
What's up, dudes? I'm Jerry D of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, books, fashion, and fads.
If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, he's got it covered. Wait, is there a lot of things to talk about for the 80s and Christmas?
Well, you got the movie giants like Christmas Vacation, Scrooged, and A Christmas Story. There are TV specials like Muppet Family Christmas, Claymation Christmas Celebration, and a Garfield Christmas special.
Plus classics shown every year.
You also jam out to Last Christmas, Do They Know It's Christmas, and Christmas in Hollis. But most of all, it was a time for the most bodacious, best-selling Christmas toys ever, like He-Man, G.I. Joe, Transformers,
and Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yes, them too. We cover them all, plus much more, including standard segments like Hap Happiest Memory, Gag Me with the Spoon, The Other Half of the Battle,
and Chant with the Littles.
So tune in to Totally Rad Christmas everywhere you get your podcasts. Turn the clock back and dive into those warm and fuzzy memories.
Later, dudes.
All right, well, let's jump into scenes and trivia. I have very little, but the race at the end of the movie used real race footage from the NASCAR Coca-Cola 500 race held at the Atlanta Motor Speedway in 1982. So they basically it was a real race, and then while the spectators were there, they repainted some of the cars and did some close-up shots, but they used a lot of footage from the actual race. The theme song in the film I mentioned earlier, Love Will Turn You Around, was performed and co-written by Rogers. It was a #1 country and adult contemporary hit. It peaked at number 13 on the pop chart. That is still probably one of my favorite Kenny Rogers songs. I always liked that song. I always liked it a lot. And then probably my favorite, which I need to scour the internet to find this, but it did spawn a TV show. Were you aware of this? I think Chris and I talked about this on the.
We talked about it before. The other one, I don't think I ever saw the TV series.
No. So, in 1983, there was a spinoff TV series pilot of the same name, which featured Don Johnson as Brewster Baker, Marky Post as Sally Ledbetter, and the show also featured a young Joaquin Phoenix in his second role.
Wow.
Yeah, which I was going to mention in Buck Rogers. That's another early Marky Post. Like she was in a couple episodes of Buck Rogers in her early career.
In her early, she did that. She did some Fall Guy.
Yeah, she was in Fall Guy for a season or two, I think.
Yeah.
Before she made her claim to fame on Night Court, which is what I remember the most from.
But you said pilot. I mean, how did it run? It actually ran on TV, though?
I don't know. That's what they said. It was. Yeah, it just said a spinoff television pilot of the same name. So it might have just been a pilot that never got aired. It's probably why you can't find it anywhere.
Okay.
So,
but there are some shows that get a pilot episode and do get aired just to see what people would think about it, what kind of ratings it got.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about box office and critical reception. The film had a limited release on July 16th, 1982, and went wide a week later on July 23rd. On July 16th, it landed at number 11 at the box office, being beat by 3 other new releases: A Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy at number 8, Young Doctors in Love at number 3, and the re-release of Raiders of the Lost Ark at number 2. E.T. the Extraterrestrial remained at number 1 in its 6th week of release. So it wasn't going to beat E.T., that's for sure. And then a week later on July 23rd, it moved up to 9 behind new releases The World According to Garp at number 4, and The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, which dethroned E.T. from the number 1 spot that week. So
really? Wow. That's what finally knocked E.T. off.
I don't know if it stayed in number 1 the whole 6 weeks, but that in the 6th week, it was in the number 1 spot. So week 7, it got dethroned. So, but yeah. Interesting enough, on Rotten Tomatoes, there is no tomato meter because it only has 1 review from a critic, which did give it a tomato. So it wasn't rotten, but it has a 71% on the popcorn meter, which is the audience score now. On IMDb, 6 out of 10 with viewers and a 45 on Metacritic. Where does it land for you guys? Is it on a scale of 1 to 10? Where would you rate Six Pack?
I give it an 8.
Okay.
I like it a lot.
As I said, I felt like it got off to a sort of a shaky start with the kind of TV movie feel. There's a scene in the diner where every character is just very cliched and cardboard. Like they've got the high school jock walks in and it's just, But it kind of grew on me as it went along. And by the end, I thought it was pretty solid, and it's a cute little movie. I'll give it a 6.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I think like the critic side of me would probably give it like a 6. I mean, that's pretty fair. But the nostalgia factor is very high, so I'm with Chris. I'm giving it an 8. It's not a 9 or a 10 where it's one I'm going to want to watch, over and over and over again like I did as a kid. But it's fun to put in. It's a good if you just want to watch something kind of mindless and silly and kind of heartwarming too for an hour and a half. It's not super long or super complex, but just to have something playing, it's definitely rewatchable. So yeah, I give it like an 8.5, maybe closer to 9. But
do you know what would have made it a 9?
More Diane Lane.
I know. Yeah.
There you go. See, I got you guys broke in already.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining me on this episode about Six Pack. It's always a pleasure to have you guys on the show. Chris, what's going on with Retro Life for you? What you got coming up in November?
I got an interview with Sam Furstenberg. If you don't remember the name Furstenberg, you'll know the movies he did because he was one of Cannon's directors back in that time frame where they did the American Ninja 2, Revenge of the Ninja, Ninja 3 The Domination, Breaking 2 Electric Boogaloo, believe it or not. You directed that one. Delta Force, Delta Force 3.
Right. He didn't direct the first one.
Not the first Delta Force, no. Delta Force 3. Then he did some B-movie type things with David Bradley and somebody else during that time frame. So I got an interview with him unless something happens where it gets rescheduled. Hopefully it will not. And now we'll get that done. And then just a couple of odd and end things until December gets here. And then we're going to do the month of Christmas movie, like we did October. We did all horror movies. So tonight we're going to record. It's just like a top 5 kind of thing. We're picking not maybe our exact top 5, but 5 of our favorite heroes and 5 of our favorite villains from the 1980s movies.
Okay, that'll be cool.
Yeah, top 5s are always fun.
Very cool. All right, well, definitely go check out Retro Life for You podcast with Chris Adams. Always a pleasure to have him on the show, and always a pleasure to have Ben Carpenter, whose podcast is yet to be announced, but we'll be looking forward to that announcement any day now.
It's still in the trying to think of an idea stage.
we refer to that as pre-production.
Yeah, there you go.
Sure.
There you go.
Yeah, let's call it that.
Yeah, he's still shopping the right market. There you go.
There you go.
So, all right, well, ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap on this episode of the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. If you had a blast listening, please take a moment to share your thoughts with us. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. It truly means the world to us. Remember to hit that follow or subscribe button and help us spread the word and spread the love to all of your fellow 80s movie fans. If you've got questions or want to dive into conversations about your favorite scenes, don't hesitate to connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. You can also support the show through buymeacoffee.com. Every contribution is greatly appreciated. Plus, be sure to check out our online store at 80sflickflashback.com and tpublic.com for amazing 80s Flick Flashback gear and unique 80s inspired designs. Thanks again for tuning in. This is Tim Williams for the 80s Flick Flashback Podcast. You no good, rotten, washed up, fork-tongued, black-hearted, double-dealing, backstabbing, alky bum. We could have been great together. That ain't no lie.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.